First item on the agenda is roll call. Candy? Or Katie? I'm sorry, I apologize.
Mrs. Sealy.
Here.
Mr. Boyle. I don't believe he was going to be able to attend. Just wanted to make sure he didn't jump on. Mr. Hoffman.
Here.
Mr. Wimble.
Present.
Mr. Updike.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell. Here. Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and seconded for the approval of the agenda. Any additions, corrections, or edits? Katie, please click the.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Mr. Wimble.
Yes.
Mr. Updike.
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell. Yes. Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
And Mrs. Sealing. Yes. Approved.
Very good. Thank you. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for coming in this evening. Moving on to recognitions, Dr. Burke.
Well, I was going to point out, we do have a couple of our new directors here tonight. So Aaron Smith, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and Christopher Villarreal. And I always say his name wrong, so I'm sure I said it wrong, but he is our Director of Communications. And so we're excited to have them. And then our other directors are here tonight as well. So any other directors have anybody you want to recognize? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Very good. Thank you. Let's move along with business with individuals. Candy?
There were no cards.
Thank you. I might keep saying Candy now.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
We answered anything.
Yeah, I apologize, Katie. Moving on to organizational items, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, I'm going to go through these. There's certain times I'll pause, but if I go through something and you want me to pause and you have questions, we'll do that. So 6.01 resolution to establish home rule by this board. This resolution basically allows you the power through the state of Kansas to have authority over the school district. 6.02 resolution to waive certain accounting requirements. I know that one of the things that some people are curious about why we would waive generally accepted accounting practices, but what it does is allows this waiver allows the district to waive various requirements and prepare final statements in conformity with requirements of KSA 7. This is probably a lot more, but the approval waiver means a significant cost savings to the district through reduced audit fee and fewer district staff members required to complete larger components of the GAAP or GAAP financial statement. And the other thing is it allows us to move forward because the feds will guarantee us money, but then they give it to the state and then the state may not give it to us. We're still guaranteed, but we're still operating, waiting on the state. So sometimes that delay can be up to a couple of months. Moving to 6.03 rescinding policies. There'll be times that you want to rescind policies. 6.04, then adoption of new policies, which hopefully you'll be doing tonight. 6.05, approval of the resolution to non-discrimination resolution. That's on the district website. That's a requirement by the state. And I'm sorry, that's a federal requirement. 6.06, approval activity fund resolution. That's policy DK. Again, this is a requirement from the state. And the board's asked to approve the activity fund. We did, if you look through all the schools there, we did add Dayton Creek Elementary School to have an activity fund. 6.07, the treasurer and the board is asked to, Doug Swin has been our treasurer for a long time. So we ask you to approve Doug. Deposit of school funds. Depositors USD230 funds shall be in all home office financial institutions in Johnson, Miami counties. State Bank of Spring Hill shall maintain all accounts for the new fiscal year. The investment of idle funds, we do have a CD in a couple of banks. And what this does is it authorizes by state statute the ability to go ahead and invest those idle funds. And the board is asking to give that authority to myself, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Swin to manage the investment program for USD230 in accordance with provisions of 91401 in the State Bank of Spring Hill, State of Kansas Municipal Investment Pool, Great Southern Bank, First Option Bank, and Tri-City Bank are authorized depositors for district idle funds. Designated of the Board of Education clerk, and we're going to ask that you designate or you appoint Katie Clare as the clerk of the board. Designation of the deputy clerk, and the board is asked to appoint Candace M. Kramer as the deputy clerk of the board. 612, that is our school lunch and breakfast program, and we're asking you to authorize J.C. Dalton to empower to enter in any agreement with Kansas State Department of Ed, and then, of course, the national lunch and breakfast programs. And that's include the milk and any other authority that goes with that. Federally funded programs, 6.13, boards asked to authorize Brad Wilson to represent the administration in all federal programs. 614, this is CAPERS, and this is the retirement system. The board's asked to authorize myself, Mr. Swin, and Mrs. Miller to represent the school district in administrating the program for CAPERS. 6.15, acts of truancy, boards asked to authorize all administrators to report any cases of truancy to appropriate agencies. 6.16, the board, the appointment of legal counsel, board's asked to authorize Greg Goheen of MVP as our designated legal counsel. The 617, appointment of auditor, the board is asked to authorize Gordon CPA as the district's auditor at the amount of $15,345. 6.18, that is the 1,116-hour authorization. The board's asked to adopt that calendar. The free and 6.19, the free and reduced meal application appeals. The board's asked to appoint Brad Wilson as the hearing officer for appeals on free and reduced meal applications. Here's where we're going to pause. So 6.12, the board is asked to appoint the Kansas Association of School Boards Governmental Relations Network representative. Currently, Mr. Winbolt is the representative. At this point, I will pause. What is the pleasure of the board?
Would you like to?
I can continue if the board would allow.
I think that's fine. All right, so Jason Winbold is who we would recommend to appoint for the
6.221 Title IX and Section 504 Americans with Disability Designation. The board's asked to designate Brad Wilson as the district coordinator under Title IX. The board's also asked to designate Cindy Jados as the district coordinator under Section 504 and Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. In addition, Cindy Jados shall be authorized to act in the district's behalf in seeking full compliance and serving students with exceptionalities and disabilities. Excuse me. 6.22, destruction of old records. Authorized Director of Business, Doug Swin, and Clerk of the Board, Katie Clare, to review old records in storage for possible destruction. As you remember, we have state statutes we have to follow. Some records have to be held for at least 7 years, some records for 5 years, some records for 3. And we have a list that we follow. 6.23, the Freedom of Information Officer and Custodial Records. The board's asked to appoint the Clerk of the Board, Katie Clare, as Custodial Records, and the Deputy Clerk of the Board, Candy Kramer, as the Freedom of Information Officer. 6.24, the Appointment Coordinator for Homeless Children and Child Welfare Agency. The board is asked to appoint Cindy Jados as Coordinator for Homeless Children, Foster Care, and Child Welfare Agencies. I'm going to pause here. 6.25, appointment of liaison for Insight School of Kansas Career Prep Program Advisory Committee. This is the first year that the state has asked them to have that, and we need the board to appoint someone.
I think I volunteered for that.
Yep. So I thought.
Chose to do that, so you can add me in there.
Okay, Mr. Updike.
Mhm.
6.26, I'm going to pause again. Appointment of liaison to the Spring Hill Recreation Committee. Ali Seedling is currently the liaison.
Yeah, I'd love to continue in that if that's okay.
6.27, appointment of Board of Education negotiating team for the 21-22 negotiation cycle. I'll pause again. Currently, Doug Updike and Sharon Mitchell were on the team.
I'm fine with staying on that.
I am as well.
Volunteer for a 1-year thing.
I think my 1 year is pretty good.
Yeah,
If we get it.
second year of a 2-year.
Yeah. Okay, I think we'll just both stay there.
Okay. 6.28, authorization of early payment of claims. The board's asked to adopt early payment request policy. There's times that we can save some money for the district as we meet some certain timelines. 6.29, petty cash limits for district attendance center. Notice that we did add Dayton Creek in here. We have kept that petty cash limit at 1,500 for quite a few years. Asked to continue to do that. 6.30, reimbursement for mileage incurred by employees on official business. Board's asked to establish the state of Kansas reimbursement rate for mileage. Reimbursable allowable in their own vehicles. And that is currently 56 cents per mile. That is a cent and a half less than last year. 6.31, selection of the official district newspaper. You can choose from the Kansas City Star, the Miami County Republic as the official newspaper. The board is asked to establish the Miami County Republic as the official district newspaper. 6.32, disposable excess or unusable district-owned equipment supplies. We're asking the district to authorize Director of Business, Director of Technology, and or Director of Facilities as directed by the superintendent to dispose of excess or unusable district-owned equipment and supplies. We usually try to sell anything that we can on Purple Wave. 6.33, substitute teacher pay. The board is asked to approve substitute teacher pay as listed. We're very competitive with communities around us. The Wellness Committee Coordinator, the board's asked to appoint Michelle Hackney as a coordinator for wellness. And I will come up to another pause. So 6.35, site council approval. Where the board is asked to appoint the people as recommended to the building site councils. We will also need board members to serve on the councils listed.
And we have 7 members for 10 schools.
That is correct. So somebody we're going to ask somebodies to do double duty.
I did 2 schools this year and I don't mind doing that again, especially in this at-large position. That way I can,
And what 2 schools would you like?
well, does anybody have a preference or is anybody really wanting to stay somewhere?
I would like to stay at Spring Hill Middle School.
Okay.
And I think I did.
I would like to stay with Insight. That one's fairly easy, but. I mean,
Is Spring Hill High School in the morning,
Yes,
like at 7 or?
yes.
Usually it's in the morning.
I don't remember who is Spring Hill High School, but I'd like to do that.
I was, but go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna wait till.
And then maybe one of the elementaries, Timber Sage or. I was at Timber Sage this year and Spring Hill Elementary, but if anyone has a preference.
I'd be willing to do another one too. I think I did 2 last year.
Mr. Hoffman?
I can stay with Wolf Creek, and if there's an extra, I could do it.
I'll go Insight in Dayton Creek.
Did you write down Timber Sage for me, Dr. Burke, or Spring Hill Spring Hill Elementary? Which one, either one?
What is your preference?
So I'll do the high school and then Timber Sage.
Okay.
I'll do Spring Hill Elementary and Spring Hill Middle School.
So I still have Woodland Spring, Prairie Creek, and Spring Hill Learning Academy. And we can't assign, since Mr. Boyle's not here, we can't assign him. The board can assign someone if you would like.
Woodland Spring, isn't that, I thought someone just said that one.
And Doug, you had that
I'd
last
like
year.
to stay there.
Doug, okay.
Woodland Spring.
So I'm still showing Prairie Creek and Spring Hill Learning Academy.
When are all of them like mid-afternoon or the high school?
Only one I
I
know
prefer
that's
an
in the
early
morning is the high school.
Yeah,
Most of them are
everything else-
mid-afternoon or early evening.
4 o'clock.
What, 3 or 4?
Yeah, 3:30 or 4.
After school.
Yep.
Yeah,
What about the early learning academy?
that I don't know. Do you know when the Spring Hill Learning Academy is?
I don't.
I don't.
I
We
think
can
this is
certainly
the
find
first
out.
year for it.
This may be the first time that they've asked.
I believe so, because it was always combined with Spring Hill Elementary in the past.
We can assign Eric to Prairie
I'll
Creek.
do anything.
I attend the Prairie Creek Insight,
No,
or their site meetings a lot of times anyway.
I'll do that.
If he can't make it,
Okay, so we'll put Eric and then you as a
I
backup.
can be a backup for there for sure.
For what, Woodlands? or
Prairie Creek.
Prairie Creek. And then you'll do,
I'll do the
Insight.
early learning.
or the Spring Hill Early Learning
Mhm.
Academy. Okay.
So just so that I'm clear, I've got Ally Sealing with Spring Hill High School, Sharon Mitchell for Spring Hill Middle School, Doug Updike for Woodland Spring Middle School, Eric for Prairie Creek Elementary School with Ally as a backup, Spring Hill Elementary School Sharon, Wolf Creek Elementary School Brent, Timber Sage Elementary School Ally, Dayton Creek Elementary School Jason, Spring Hill Early Learning Academy Nels, and Insight School of Kansas Jason. So what everybody has?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And then I believe the last thing is 6.36, the board meeting calendar. Board's asked to approve the calendar. It's a little unique because later in the meeting, we will discuss some changes that need to be made to that calendar. That has to do with the revenue neutral tax rate. And so instead of having you approve it here and then turn around and approve it again, we're just going to ask you to approve it here. Part of it is the budget workshop, the law changed. And so the budget workshop will be moved later. The budget hearing will be moved later. And then we'll have to have a hearing for the revenue neutral rate as well. So we're asking you to go ahead and put that along with the regular board meeting calendar. So with that, that is our organizational items. All 36 of them.
Yeah, questions, comments? Concerns?
Mr. President, I move we approve the organizational items as presented and modified.
Second,
Let's move and seconded to approve the organizational items as presented. Final chance for questions, comments, or concerns. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
approved.
Very good. Thank you. A lot of work that just went through the organizational items. So moving on, consent agenda, which includes approval of the consent agenda items, approval of the minutes from our last stated meeting, personnel, the natural gas agreement, and the Kansas Association of School Board June 2021 policy approval that I believe we had as a discussion item in our last regularly stated meeting. So that's the consent agenda. Any edits, corrections, questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Doug, could you run through the cost on the natural gas? Because it appears to be open-ended dependent on the market. Is that correct? There's not a firm number in it?
Yeah, it's based on market price. We don't have quite the protections in place that we did last go around, which is one of the reasons why we're within Encore now versus Constellation. But one thing we do as a group with the Green Bush Cooperative is we can go ahead and buy some of that in advance if we see the market ticking upward. And so we can lock in and buy, 50% of usage to help protect us if we feel like there's going to be a jump in price.
And Green Bush does that?
They do it on our behalf, yes.
Okay.
But if we don't like the decision, they usually will warn us when they're getting ready to hedge, do a hedge protection. If we don't like what they're doing, we can opt out, but usually they're watching it pretty close and they haven't been wrong. So we trust their expertise.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
Have we, on the natural gas agreement, have we looked at other cooperatives that within the state?
I'm only aware of one other one, the KSB one. I know this year some of their members paid some pretty hefty charges because they didn't have quite the protection in place as the Greenbush one. So I do keep an eye on theirs just to see if someday they might be a little better shape than where we're at. But Greenbush has been really good to us for several years. So that's why we've remained with them.
Yeah, we've gotten quite a few updates on the KSB one. Looks like it might be going to court.
I fully expected to go to court.
Yeah.
I heard most members were looking at 5 to 7 times the cost for that month of February. And
They're trying to
so,
do some negotiations now.
yeah, hopefully they can land somewhere in the middle, but where we paid less than double, I don't think anybody that's in that group's gonna be anywhere near that rate. So we survived. We dodged a pretty big bullet.
Good.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Mr. President, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as noted. Final chance for questions or comments. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Wimble,
Yes.
Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes, but I, before I say yes, I have one question. Why is that policy talk about whistleblower protection, but there's no mention in the policy of whistleblower protection? I didn't really say it on the title of it, just in the agenda, I guess. It was just a mistake, I guess.
I think that's a mistake because that should be just the, I believe, just the annual operating budget.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
Mrs. Sealing? Yes. And Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to an action item, which is Kansas House Bill 2104. Dr. Burke?
Yeah, this is the revenue neutral tax rate. This is the one that we spent quite a bit of time talking about at the last meeting. Basically, in the state of Kansas, if you have 20 mills and any increased assessed valuation, you're going to have to notify your clerk, your county clerk, and let them know that you are going to be above the revenue neutral. It's a little frustrating because we were talking to the state of Kansas last week in a meeting, and there's not one district in the state of Kansas that is going to be below the revenue neutral rate. So I'm not exactly sure why this was put in, but basically it's transparency. Let people know. Originally, let them know that you're going to be above the revenue neutral rate. Originally, when this bill came out, schools were exempt because we still have to have a budget hearing as well. But with that, now that we'll have to have a hearing, and then after that hearing, then we have a budget hearing. So with that, the board's asked to approve the intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate and adopt through resolution. Doug and I will stand for any questions that you have.
This is for permission to exceed we exceed it, but we have already done it, correct?
This is not for permission. This is basically you're stating to the public that you're going to exceed the rate.
But we already did.
We haven't done our budget yet, so.
Oh, this is for 21, 22?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
This is just because we haven't done the budget meeting yet. This is to say, if we do exceed it, we've already approved it.
That is
But we're
correct.
not necessarily saying we are or we're not at the moment because we haven't had our budget meeting yet.
Right. But we're going to exceed
Yeah.
it. So we're telling the public that we're going to exceed it. If we do nothing, just because of the assessed valuations in our county, we're going to exceed the revenue
Yes, our
neutral rate.
Just turn.
our general fund, we're required by state statute to levy 20 mills. Because of the calculation, we would have to lower that mill levy down to, I think it was 17.9 is what the Johnson County Clerk's Office told me to remain revenue neutral. That's totally out of our control, but based on that fact alone, we have to pass this resolution. And then there's a form that I turn back into the county clerk's office by July 20th, which is one of the attachments tonight. That's labeled RNR due back July 20th. And that's when I filled out where I show that absolute worst case scenario, it would go up 2 mils from last year. But again, I have to hedge on the high side so we don't have to go back and republish and jump through a whole bunch of hoops. So I don't think we're going to be anywhere near that, but that's to protect you all from a bunch more work.
So that 69.8 is 2 mil above what you would.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's exactly.
Didn't know what that was based on.
Just a placeholder.
And how does this affect the rec commission? Right, I see a lot of stuff from them in there.
Yeah, I attached theirs because they're having to jump through the same exact hoops we are. Last year, they levied 3.05 mils. This year, they're planning on levying 3.05 mils, but they have the same problem we do in that based on the revenue neutral calculation, their mill levy would have been forced to go downward to remain revenue neutral, and they want to hold it flat. So
Yeah, this isn't just affecting schools. This is affecting municipalities, cities,
rec commissions.
libraries, rec commissions. It's all across the state.
So what has changed from last year to make this different?
This is new.
This is a new law.
Oh, it's a new law.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
brand new.
Just the
And
fact
it's-
that you have to say that you are going to, or there's possibility.
Right, and
Gotcha.
The biggest issue to me is if it was a revenue or if it was a tax rate neutrality, that might be better for us because we could kind of stay neutral on the rate. But it's a revenue neutral. So anytime our assessed valuation goes up, we're gonna have to do something. We're gonna have to publish.
Yep.
And so it's very onerous on us, especially Doug and his team. The other thing is for the first 2 years, the county is responsible for mailing out all the letters to all the people in our district because everybody's going to get a letter saying that we're going to exceed revenue neutral rate. After 2 years, it's going to be our responsibility to send out that letter at our cost. The state doesn't give us the money for that. So it's going to be our cost to send those letters out. And it's really kind of, I understand the purpose of it is to be transparent. But I think we're really transparent with our public anyway, with budget hearings and the publications we do in the newspaper and that sort of thing. So.
It would make more sense if we didn't already have to do a budget hearing.
Right.
So,
So I've talked to representatives about getting it repealed and we'll see if that'll happen next session.
Any other questions or comments on Kansas House Bill 2104?
Do we have to read the whole resolution or just the number?
You've got a stated resolution on board docs and I would stick with that.
Just read the resolution. Okay. Mr. President, I move that the board approve our intent to exceed revenue neutral tax rate revenue neutral rate and adopt the following resolution 2207. Resolution expressing the property taxation policy of USD 230 Spring Hill with respect to exceeding the revenue neutral tax rate for financing the annual budget for 21-22. Whereas 2021 SB 13 and Senate sub for HB 2104 provides that a levy of property taxes to finance the 2021-2022 budget of USD 230 exceeds the revenue neutral tax rate to finance the 2021-2022 budget of USD 230 be authorized by resolution. Now therefore be it resolved by USD 230 that the 2021-2022 budget with a levy of property taxes exceeding the revenue neutral tax rate calculated for 2021-2022 as adjusted pursuant to 2021 SB 13 and Senate sub for HB 2104 is hereby adopted. Adopted on this 12th day of July, 2021 by USD 230, Johnson, Miami County, Kansas.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to approve resolution 22-7 as read. Any final questions, answers, comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
and Mr. Wimble.
Yes.
Approved.
Very good, thank you. Moving on to discussion items. Dr. Burke, bond construction update.
Yeah, we're going to turn this over to Mr. Tim Meek. He's our Director of Safety and Construction, and let him give us an update on what's going on.
A lot of you got a little bit of an update earlier.
Thank you.
So, Rick, you didn't miss a lot because you've probably seen that building before. Most of it, there are different. Happy you want to take a look at it. I'll pick you up on that. We're gonna have the open house too on the 28th.
Oh, sorry. Actually, the open house is a ton of fun if you show up.
So, yeah. Open house is on the 28th. Now you can hear me. All right. We'll scroll down here. Bond budget for the 2018 bond, there's really been no changes since our last. We're still working on closeouts of the Education Support Center. We're getting close to where we can start closing out Dayton Creek, but there's still a little bit to be done and a lot of FF&E and stuff like that to be done on it. So Dayton Creek Elementary School going to be opening here next month. So it's ready pretty much. There's a few little touches to be done, some books to be brought in, a few things like that, but it's there. Next milestones, we're going to complete the site landscaping. We're going to complete the punch list work items. Most of those are exterior items dealing with landscaping. A couple of owner training things left to do. Finalize the closeout documents and financials, and then again, the dedication ceremony. Big success was we do have the permanent network connection with the rest of the district now in that building. So everything's up and running. Took a while to get there through all of the work through RG fiber and all of the conduits that they put in the ground for us and stuff, but everything got connected. And so we're 100% operational there. And safety report, there's really been no change in that. There has been a few workers there, but they're tracking them, but they're not doing an annual, a weekly report. So we're just keeping it at the April 6th update. So, but no accidents or anything. Spring Hill Middle School number 3, scheduled to open in the fall of 2023. Right now, we're continuing on the structural foundations, underground site electrical, sanitary sewer and storm line installation. Beginning the gym slab and the concrete walls will probably happen next week. Concrete walls will start going up in 2 weeks. Complete the temp roads in the east parking lot. A lot of you, as you came down 191st, may have been your first chance to look at the entrance, that main gravel road there. It will be the main entrance off 191st to that site. So challenge successes, public improvement agreement. I believe the city passed that last Thursday. So we're going forward with that. We're going to have a pre-install meeting with the contractors, the city engineer, and everybody on board at the end of this week. Lithco has been our concrete contractor, has been just going great guns. They missed one day because of some rain, but other than that, they've been working hard and ahead of schedule on our foundations and footings, and they'll also be starting the slab next week. We're hoping at the end of the week for the gymnasium area, and then starting on some other slab at the same time too. A little bit of a challenge with our Saladino. They're our plumbing contractor. They were a little slow coming to the plate, but we finally got them to get a second crew there. And so they've been getting ahead and been able to stay ahead of the Lithco now and getting the underground plumbing in. So safety report, 93 days with no accidents or lost time accidents. A couple pictures there of the footings going in. That's the track and around the football fields, the black dirt there. So they're putting in the drainage around that, and hopefully in less than 2 months, we'll have the track itself, the asphalt part of the track down. And then we'll be continuing to work on the football field part of it and have that all in and ready to go. We will not put the track surfacing down though until the summer, right before we open the building. So other construction projects, pavement rehab at Spring Elementary School. If you drove down Webster, you might have noticed how nice that looks on the big area there to the north side of the school. Dressed it up a lot. Plus it's a little, you don't have to dodge anything as you drive through it. So no potholes to dodge right now. It began just 2 weeks ago, and I think they've got a little bit left. The rain of the last week slowed them down. They've went on to some jobs where they can work without, where they're working on doing top coats and stuff right now. So we've got a little bit of cutout and replace to do on the playground area and a couple of other things there. So they'll be back hopefully in the next couple of days, I believe. So to finish that, if it stays dry. A couple pictures of that. Actually, it looks a whole lot better than that. I took these early last week, and now they've got all the arrows and everything else pointed on that. Tennis court rehab. It's begun. You can see what some of the problem areas were. In the next pictures there, you can see that the repairs are in progress. They pulled most of the post out where the nets where they were pulling up out of the ground and cracks around them and stuff. And we're getting the new sleeves put in right now. And then we'll start working on the rest of the field of the tennis courts.
Tim, do you know when that is supposed to be completed?
Well, I know we're hoping by the end of the month, basically, right, Kylie? Yeah. So that's the plan by the end of July, so. Solar panel project. Little bit of delay in procurement of some of the equipment for it. So what they thought they would get readily and quickly is slowed down a little bit, but we're still moving forward with some of the things we can do. Number one thing we're going to do and get done before we get staff back in the building is get the tie-in for the equipment and then put a disconnect outside the main switch panel and switch gear so that when it comes time to turn it on, we're not having to disrupt school or anything else or work overnight or some things like that. So we're going to get that tie-in done here in the next couple of weeks. So we're just kind of waiting until they get a date for the equipment to know a little bit more when it's shipped in. I don't know if it's in the middle of Suez Canal still or somewhere, what it is, but they'll be here. Roof repairs at the former BOE building. We're just waiting on them to get ready. It'll be completed here probably after school starts is when it'll actually start, but it won't be any disruption to any of the processes that Insight has there. So the contractor there says they have all the materials ready to go. They're just trying to get the jobs they already had booked out of the way before they get there. So
Do you know, Tim, is there any plans for signage on that building? Or is that up to Insight or is that up to the district?
haven't
don't know.
discussed it. So
Okay.
yeah, I don't know that Insight has any. They never really had anything other than an address on Hilltop up there. So
Okay.
yeah.
The Name of the building has been pulled down though, hasn't it? I mean, like.
Yeah, it doesn't say, yeah,
It would been down for a couple of years.
yeah, we'd actually
Has it?
taken it down and
It was coming down, I think.
Yeah.
those old plastic letters had broken and we chose not to
It
replace.
might be good to have a sign for people to know what's there.
We'll visit about that and see what we want to do. Any questions?
I put you on the spot. Do you have any update by chance on the roundabout?
No.
Okay.
I have not.
They're
I've
still on
driven up
schedule.
there and I've talked to the contractor and he still assures me that he's on schedule, but I haven't had anything official from the city and I didn't check their.
We've been told mid-September, but that was not official.
For the north south?
They're still talking about mid-August for the
Right.
main, for Ridgeview to go through.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but they're still mid to late September for the full access of everything.
Okay.
Middle of October before it's completed with all of the dirt work on the exterior and stuff, but it should be by the middle to end of September, have access fully around it and down the road. There'll continue to be some fringe work, some landscaping and stuff like that that'll happen after that, so. Yeah. No, I haven't heard a update other than just going up there and talking to the contractor and asking how things are going. And he says that they're
I'm
moving
just
along.
curious. If
Yeah.
they-
It doesn't look like to me they're making the progress that I would want, but it's not my project and I don't know what their schedule is, so. You know.
Should we start a pool to see who drives through it first? How many days it takes? 2 weeks,
Yeah.
3 weeks?
Legally
I don't know.
Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim.
All right.
Spring Hill Live contract renewal, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, we started a partnership a few years ago with BJ Harris and Spring Hill Sports Live. I think it's been just a phenomenal asset to our community. It's really nice. I know that many times, especially when we were limited on how many people could actually go and attend games. But I also know that it's been really nice that when we made it to state or some other regional competitions to be able to have that broadcast live. BJ asked if he needed to be here tonight. I told him I didn't think so, unless you really want to talk to him. The contract is basically the same contract that we've had 3 years in a row. He feels like it's been a very positive, win-win relationship, and so do I. And I've not heard any negativity about it. So I'll stand for any questions, but I think this has been a very positive and fruitful relationship for both sides.
My only question was how you decide how many of some of the games. I see there's quite a few more football than
I
volleyball.
think
not
some
much
of it
soccer.
from talking to him is dependent on whether he can get advertising or not for the games, because
That
he's
way
got to
we-
have a way to fund the workers and a lot of people want to advertise for games that they know a lot of people are going to be watching.
Got it.
One question I had about this, is there any possibilities of working with, and it's kind of off topic a little bit, but working with some of our instructors to kind of develop a program to teach kids how to do this with some of the JV games or some of the games that aren't being live streamed? Is there any way we could do some kind of partnership for training of some of our students? Because some of the schools have high school kids doing the commentary, and some of it's kind of painful because I've watched some of them, but
We could certainly talk to Mr. Harris about it and visit with the high school, see if we can set
yeah.
something out. A lot depends on the curriculum what that would fall under.
Mhm,
So we would have to put something together, but yeah, I think that if nothing else, maybe we can create some type of internship with them.
mhm.
Maybe we could get some lesser sports covered that way. If you
Yeah,
had
that's gonna-
students
yeah.
helping instead of having to bring workers in.
I believe we still have a video production class.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do. I don't know how much of the equipment that we can go out on site.
Right.
I don't want to make promises because I don't have my
Sure.
principal here, so.
Yeah, and I really just kind of thought about this tonight while I was reading over right before the meeting. So I wasn't trying to spring it on you or anything, but I just thought might be something that we could check into. So
Well, I mean,
We
it
can
could
certainly
be-
check into it. and
Yeah, I
talk.
mean, it could be even more of a sports production, sports TV and radio production type of class that is more specific. Pretty cool.
Is this something that we would like added to the list?
Sure.
Okay,
Mhm.
perfect.
But when you add it to the list, that means you're going to come back and do a presentation to us about what you would like for us to do. So,
well, but isn't it more just having an informal discussion about it?
right,
So
but you're going to lead the informal discussion.
I'll lead it. And I haven't even, this isn't something I talked to BJ about or anything, but I'd be willing to do that if you want me to. But,
I would,
okay.
because the thing is, when we come back and present it, then it sounds like this is something that we want. And I'm
Right.
not saying that we didn't want it,
Right.
but what I'm saying is this is something you guys brought up. So if a board member brings up, then we need to know what your vision is,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you're
Absolutely.
thinking.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds good.
so when we put things on the list, we need direction once we get done with the board as to what is it specifically you want us to do.
Okay. So as of right now, you'll put it on the agenda sometime and we can kind of informally.
Well, I can
discuss.
talk to Mark and visit with it, but if you want to do some research and talk to BJ and
Okay.
follow up and just have an informal discussion with the board, just let us know when and we'll get you on the agenda.
Okay. Sounds good.
Any questions around the agreement for Spring Hill Sports Live? Okay, I think this can be brought back under the consent agenda at our next meeting. Moving on to 2022-2023 academic calendar, Dr. Burke.
I'm going to leave it to our board clerk. Do you want to share with them what you've done here?
Absolutely. We put together 3 different sample calendars for the 22-23 school year. Dr. Burke and Mr. Wilson and myself did a lot of looking at these and sent them out to the Superintendent's Advisory Council. There are 26 members on that council, which are, it's attached here on the item. We did receive 24 responses back. And you will see a summary on here as well. And in that summary, you will see that 50% of those that responded preferred calendar preference A. So that was by far the majority preference. Calendar B was 29.2 and calendar C was 20.8. I've also attached all of the feedback that was received from those respondents, and the majority feedback for the preference for calendar A was the extra time at the front end of winter break. It gave a few extra days at the front end of winter break versus at the back end of winter break. So that kind of seemed to be the largest preference. I will say that when this is sent out to the advisory council, a big part of that is comprised of administration, and they are asked to share that with their staff as well as any teachers that went out to. It was asked that they share that with their departments or grade levels, whatever. So there was feedback from more than just the 26 people as well.
One of the things with that should be noted is with the negotiations, there is some adjustments that could be made if the board chooses to approve the negotiations. We have worked that into all 3 of these drafts.
Any questions on 2022-2023 academic calendar?
Wasn't it this year that the legislature made some kind of a resolution that everybody had to take spring break at the same time? Or did that? Was that not?
I can't recall if that was a resolution. I believe it was a recommendation, but we did take that into account. And
Okay.
this does account for spring break during the same time as the universities and the other Johnson
I
County.
started to say, what you're talking about was the higher ed came in and said that all universities have to
Oh,
take spring
gotcha.
break at the same time.
But it's not the same week as ours, or it's not this next school year.
I don't remember because I think last time we had a conflict because we run into this a lot. We want to be aligned with the other Johnson County schools, or we want to be aligned with KU and K-State. And unfortunately, I don't think KU and K-State have been aligned. And
Right.
so what we've tried to do is align with the other Johnson County
I
schools.
think most of, we're just filling in calendars the week before the universities or the week before us this coming school year.
Yeah.
Any other
I see
questions?
the- I see the big difference too. Also, I wasn't surprised that they went with A because C is creeping further up in August also. Feels like we're always creeping further and further to a school starting earlier. It's starting on, it looks like C was on the 15th as opposed to the 17, 18, 19th that we've been in this year. And even on calendar A, I think it was, if I remember right, the 17th, 16th, 17th. So.
And Mrs. Sealing, you're pointing out something that really happens a lot. Each year you try to, we don't try to, but each year, a lot of times, everything's based on the reciprocal date.
Mhm.
So it's a year,
Right.
a day earlier, a day earlier. At some time, you got to roll back.
Right.
A couple of years ago, we rolled back, and that's why we started, especially this last year, that's why we started later than some of the other schools around us, because we rolled back. But you're exactly right. It seems to creep
Mhm.
every year. So that's something that the committee is very cognizant of when we look at that.
Any other questions on the 2022, 2023 calendar, academic calendar? Let's bring this back on the consent agenda. All right, thank you. Moving on to Esser Funds, Dr. Burke.
Yeah, I've asked Doug Swin to give you, the board, an update on the Esser Funds. And there's just I think there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes it kind of all runs together. So Doug's going to give you kind of a coordinated effort to talk to you about where all the funds are.
Thank you. I will do my best. Speaking of COVID and ESSER funding, it can get very confusing very fast. So I don't know, are you driving? I would like to start by referring to the sheet that says, or the attachment that's the COVID funding summary. To me, that's the document I use to try to keep myself organized as far as buckets of money, pots of money, and the timing of everything. So at the very top, you're going to see there is now 10 buckets of money that's related to federal funding. Way back a year ago in July, for some perspective, as we were heading into the new year and trying to get a handle on what we might anticipate for COVID expenditures, the number that came to my mind early on was about $1 million. I thought it was going to take $1 million to get through the year and basically not have to dig into reserves to survive. Well, the first pots of money we found out about was from the county, Sparks or CARES or whatever the name. I believe it goes by CARES. That's what's on my spreadsheet. Miami County was actually the first one to step up to the plate, and they offered us $188,163. The main stipulation with that was it had to be spent on expenditures between March and December. So they had a quick turnaround as far as, so obviously strategically, we wanted to spend that pot of money out first and quickly. Second pot that turned up was Johnson County. They kicked in $210,000. Slightly disappointing considering we have much more students in Johnson County than Miami County, but we were hoping that maybe at the end of the day, they might have some leftover funds and they would say, oh, let's give a little more to schools. Never happened. So anyhow, between those two entities, we got about 400,000. So I would say September, October of last year, I'm still thinking I've got 1 million expenditures and only 400,000 available to spend. Well, then ESSER 1 showed up, and you can see ESSER 1, the very first pot was just under 100,000, and then there was some earmarked for SPED, just over 62,000. So at that point in time, I'm feeling a little bit better. I'm up to almost $600,000. It's Christmas time. I know I still have a $400,000 shortfall, but I'm starting to hear rumors that there may be ESSER two money coming out. And sure enough, it was later revealed that we do have ESSER fund money on the way. ESSER two funding, as you can see, is broken into three parts. There's what we call the direct part, which is based on title population, which is what kills us, is we have a relatively low title population, Title I population. And since all this federal money is being distributed based on title population, most of the districts in Johnson County were at the very bottom as far as per pupil allocation, which led to ESSER two PSA, which stands for per student allotment, also known as now called true up money. And it was determined at the state level that they recognized that the districts with low Title I populations were really at a disadvantage when COVID kind of impacted us all equally. You know, we had to clean, we had to, a lot of cases, hire additional staff. It wasn't discriminatory based on your Title I population. The state recognized that. They had a big enough pot of money that said, okay, for ESSER two, we're going to give those districts at the bottom a little bit more. And they based it on a minimum of $300 per pupil. So that made me feel much better inside. That finally, once ESSER two was revealed, I finally realized, great, we're going to get through 2021 just fine. And we'll have some money to actually go into the future with. And then shortly thereafter, you'll see ESSER three. The only pot of money we don't have an exact dollar amount, I don't believe yet, is ESSER three SPED. So that's why I've highlighted it in orange. It's an estimated amount. So if you add up all 10 pots of money, you're looking at $3.8 million. These funds, except for the ones that came from the county, the ESSER funds, basically you can use expenditures from March 2020 all the way through September 2024. Okay. And you want to spend them out in order. You don't want to go spend in ESSER three if you haven't spent out ESSER one, ESSER two. So on my spreadsheet, you'll see on the right-hand side, I started listing those buckets that are now empty. ESSER one, totally spent. ESSER one SPED, totally spent. CARES money for both Miami and Johnson County, that's all gone. Right now, as I'm cleaning up the end of calendar year or fiscal year 2021, I don't have an exact number yet on ESSER two, but we have spent a good portion of those ESSER two funds. Even though we haven't turned in an application yet to the state, we have a guarantee we're going to get those funds. I'm very confident in that. And the statute allows us to go ahead and spend those funds, even though technically our application hasn't been approved yet, which I'll be referring to here shortly. So down below, I listed receipts because I needed to keep track of when the money was actually coming in and hitting our bank account. And you'll see the Johnson County money that we received came in two payments, and the Miami County money came in two payments. Two reasons. The Miami County money came in two parts because one, they initially asked for an expenditure report fairly quickly. And so I knew when they were asking for their first spend down amount that we had spent $32,000. I could go to our expenditure list. I had it identified. I turned in for a reimbursement of $32,000. By the time they asked for the second request, I had the rest all organized. And so we were able to spend down the $155,000. So that was just a timing thing. I didn't know what the final amount was until later on in the process. Johnson County money, I actually turned in the whole $210,000 to be reimbursed up front. I thought I had $210,000 claimed. It turns out that one of the expenditures I turned in was related to curriculum. And the curriculum that we bought was to be used for the full school year. I told you a little while ago, the cutoff was December because it rolled, because it was going to be used over a year period, but they wanted expenditures that cut off in December. They prorated it on me. So they shorted my invoice that I turned in to be reimbursed. So they only give me $202,930. So I had a little bit more money to turn in and get that last remaining amount. And then you'll see in February of 21 is when I drew down the Esser 1 direct money as well as the sped money. So no Esser 2 money has been drawn down yet because the application needs to be submitted. With that, I will pause and see if you have any questions on the $20,000 view of the overall pots of money or buckets. Okay, that's okay.
That's okay. When will we know how much is being allotted for Esser 3?
Esser 3, we know except for the sped. You'll see that the direct allocation is 983,555. And the true up or the per student allocation, that's going to get us to $600 per kid, significantly more than Esser 2, and that's just over $1 million. So Esser 3 is by far and away the biggest pot of money that we'll get. And they haven't even got that application ready yet. They know what the amounts are. They just don't have, and I don't anticipate there's going to be any hurry to get that application out because only a small percentage of the school districts have even applied for Esser 2 funding at this point. I believe there's been 2 rounds. There were 20 districts applying in the first round, I think 25 in round 2. So there's still, to the best of my knowledge, over 100 districts that still need to turn in their Esser 2 application. So we're not alone. But ours is complete, and I've attached that, which is where I'm heading next, unless we have any other questions.
One other question. So for all of the Essers 1, 2, and 3, the use dates are, the end date is September of 2024. Is that what you said?
September 2024.
And then
Yes.
is there specific requirements on what it can be spent on?
There is, and that is a great question. And one of the attachments that I was going to refer to, I'm not going to refer to all of them, was labeled Esser 1, 2, and 3 information. It is a document that I stumbled on just here not too long ago that actually gives all the rules and it's about a 25-page PDF, gives all the rules and regulations, the timelines, the allotments for all the districts in the state of Kansas. If you like numbers like me, you'll find that some of the allotments that people are getting is significantly higher than ours. And I will label it crazy money. I mean, absolutely crazy money. I don't know how they're going to spend it all. Go ahead.
Pause first. Would you go ahead and pull up the Esser 1, 2, and 3 and pick up that form?
Yeah.
Just so that the public can see what Doug's talking about.
I think
And then
he's-
if you scroll down,
Page 6, I think is what he's looking at, right?
yeah, if you scroll down, you start showing the Esser 1, 2, and 3 allocations for each of the districts. We're 230. And so that you can look at the districts on either side of us. And then if you go all the way down to page, I believe it starts on page 11. That is the allowable uses for Esser 1. And then I believe if you go down to page 13, that's the allowable uses for Esser 2. So sorry to interrupt, Doug.
Oh, no, excellent
Public can
point.
keep up with what you're talking about.
Yes, and it is a really good document that summarizes all the different pots of money, the rules and regulations, and it's kind of neat to see what other districts are getting. I don't want to pick, I have some really good friends with the Turner School District, so I'm not picking on them. In fact, my wife is a graduate of Turner, but they are getting crazy money. They're getting almost $10 million. They're basically the same size as us. And here we're getting just under $4 million. Thankful because of what Miami County and Johnson County kicked in. So, but they are a much higher Title I population. So, and that's what it was initially distributed on. So you will find in there districts that are much smaller than us getting more money than us. And I am thankful though that the state recognized that and they did the true up provision, because otherwise it would have been a huge discrepancy in funding in my humble opinion. So great document to look at if you want to really dive into the details of the different pots of money. The final thing, well, not the final, but the next thing I was going to talk to you about is the Esser 2 application. It's actually an Excel spreadsheet it's actually labeled Esser 2 application, draft status, USD230. This is where I am required to show the state how we intend to spend both our direct allocation and our true up allocation. And I'm going to summarize real brief the differences between those two pots. Direct is just over 437,000. A small amount, 47,000, is going to be used on remaining cleaning supplies from this last school year that we just completed. It's also going to cover our 4 optional remote learning teachers that we had to hire to be able to offer both in-person and remote learning. That was not a cost we had budgeted up front. That amount was just over 210,000. And then finally, you might recall we hired an additional classified person in each of the buildings to do temperature checks, additional light custodial cleaning, and help out with things that related to COVID. So those 7 positions, salary and benefits, was just under 180,000. So if you add up those 3 pieces, it equals the 437,942 that we were allotted. And that was money that's already been spent, gone. Okay. So we're looking for a reimbursement for that. The other half of Esser 2 is the true up, which is $557 and $4. And let me summarize. You can see the breakdown in the Excel spreadsheet, but it's a little confusing to read because I have to break it down based on salary, based on benefits, based on Social Security. There's a whole lot more detail there than you probably care to hear about. But there's 3 main pots or pieces. First is cleaning supplies, and this is anticipating cleaning supplies for 21-22. Could be much higher than that. I budgeted 50,000. We have hired 7 brand new math and reading interventionists at the various buildings, which is almost 450,000. It's a big chunk of money, but it's to help with student learning, and that's what this money's earmarked for. So, and then finally, I have some cleaning services. We used MC Janitorial last year, and I anticipate we'll be using them again this year because we're having difficulty hiring custodians, and plus all the additional cleaning responsibilities we had last year. But we spent quite a bit to them, so we're trying to recover some of that money spent out of last year's budget. Add those 3 pieces up together, and you're talking 557,004. So that is the plan for Esser 2 funding. The application's in draft status. I do plan to bring it back to you to the next meeting, just to make sure I haven't done any fine tuning, and then it'll need to be approved by you before I then submit it to the state board for approval. So it will come back to you one more time at the July 26th meeting for final action. Any questions on Esser 2 application? And they don't, it's probably important to note, they don't have the SPED application quite set up yet. So that's going to be coming down the road here soon. That'll be a separate piece. All right.
So I will say that I've been asked to be on the task force. So we're now down, we were doing it every week, then every other week, and then we're down to once a month. So we just had our meeting last Friday on Esser 2 funds applications. We got an update that 169 out of the 286 districts have submitted an Esser 2 plan.
Oh, okay.
So it's up to 59%. Another 10 are going to be sending some more information in. So 131 Esser 2 plans have been approved by the State Board of Education. And then some more, we've got some more that came through this last Friday with some changes. So every month we'll be doing an update. In September, they have private school funding as well. So we'll be doing that. But yeah, if we can get the applications in before the task force meets, then we can actually get that approved and over to the state board to approve and get our funds that much sooner.
Yeah.
So our next meeting is August 9th or August 6th, I think. So hopefully we can get that done by the end of this month and get it in.
Yeah. So I think it's just a matter of bringing it back next meeting for final action. I'll look over the numbers one more time as I'm cleaning up. Like I said, some of these are for 2021 expenditures. I'll probably get real fine tuned as far as the final numbers go. Right now, there's some estimates in there, but I know they're very close and we should be ready to go.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to, has the desire to watch the meeting, they are public. They are live streamed. And like I said, we just do one Friday a month now. And it's the information's out public ahead of the meeting. So you can see what other school districts are applying for. One of the questions that we had this last time that came to us was one of the school districts actually purchased an outdoor stage for graduation, which usually is not allowable, but they're also now they're going to use it for outdoor performances to help with COVID. So now that's allowable. So they were pretty creative on their justifications. So, just look for any way we can actually get those approved.
I did take a peek at the first round. There is a PDF out there that shows in detail all those applications. It's only 700 pages. So,
And I have to go through that the Wednesday before the Friday.
and the second round was just over 1,000 pages.
Yeah.
So they're pretty large PDFs. Because I was curious, how are people labeling things? How are they spending their money? Especially those ones that are, I hate to use the word swimming in it. They really are. They've got a lot of money to spend and they're having to be creative. They're coming up with things that I wouldn't even have thought about probably. So anyhow.
Yep. Anything tied to COVID, anything tied to outdoor activities, things like that. So.
Yep. So that brings me to the final thing I was going to cover tonight, and that's Esser 3. And as I mentioned, that is our largest bucket of money. And there is no application yet, so I can't show you in depth the breakdown of all that. But I can tell you this, because we are obligated to, I feel like we're obligated to keep our 7 new math and reading interventionists on the payroll. I think they're going to be extremely valuable to our student learning. I told you just a little while ago, that's about $450,000. So the plan would be is to continue funding that with Esser funding for the next 2 years on that. And then we also have some curriculum for the next couple of years that we plan on purchasing with that. And some cleaning that's going to have to take place. I don't think cleaning will go away anytime soon. And then, quite honestly, it's the unknown. I mean, we feel like we're out of the woods now. That may or may not be true, but here's the deal. If we, I told you for 2020-21, we spent $1 million. And if for some reason we're spending another $1 million next year, another $1 million, the money's gone. So I think we got to be careful not to earmark it all right now, because then if something comes up, there's no guarantee there's going to be an Esser 4 pot of money. So you really got to be careful not to, in my opinion, spend every last penny right now, because you just don't know what the future holds. So I think what we intend to spend it on is very much within the purpose of the federal grant. And I have no concerns with whatsoever as far as surviving an audit. I mean, that's the big thing. Someday I would anticipate, because there is so much money involved, it's going to get audited. It may be 2 or 3 years down the road, but I want to be prepared that when auditors show up. We have everything lined out. Here's what we spend it on. Just like you might have opened up the documents that I had for Miami and Johnson County, where I broke down every invoice and exactly what it is. That's the kind of level of detail I'm storing so that when the audit comes, we're ready for them. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You just want to be careful because we don't want to be in a position where we have to return anything down the road. That's not fun. So with that was kind of what I wanted to cover tonight. And I'll stand for any questions you might have.
With the interventionalists that you're hiring, do you foresee, and maybe this is more a question, that eventually they'll kind of be absorbed back into classroom teachers and stuff like that?
Yeah, we're planning on doing that. As we pick up growth through the years.
Wait a minute, may I ask for clarification on the question? Did you ask if they would be returned to the classroom?
Well,
classroom
more just
teachers?
like, will they always be those interventionalists, or do you see that there'll always be a need for them, or will they
Yes.
be? Okay,
I do. And again, best case world, they're doing a great job and our number of at-risk kids and kids decreases significantly and maybe we don't see them. I've not seen that happen in any school district that uses MTSS to where they get to a point where they don't feel like they need them at all. But what we are going to do is start transitioning them to the general fund as Esser Funds fade
I'm sorry,
out.
I thought you were talking.
yeah,
about
that's
funding.
kind of what
Yeah, I figured that's the question you were answering.
I was kind of asking where the money was going to come from
Yeah,
for them, if they were still going to be doing the same thing or something different, either one.
One of the things that really hurts us is we're in a year delay. And so right now we've got 110 kids that showed up in December that we'll get no money for. Then, we're on projected to be anywhere from 200 to 300 kids this year. We'll get zero funds for that. But the following year, we should expect to get money for an additional minimum 300 kids. So that's why you're in kind of in a year delay. And so as a fast growing district, it really hurts us. If we were losing kids, that would be a wonderful thing. So, but yeah, our plan is as we get bigger and we continue to grow, we would absorb the cost of those teachers. And yes, we would continue to use them, through growth.
Any other questions for Doug on Esser Funds? Very good. Moving on to, thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. That helps a lot and clarifies.
Clear as mud.
Moving on to proposal of new holidays, Dr. Burke.
Yeah. One of the things that's always kind of surprised me a little bit about our district is the only paid holidays that our district has during the holiday break, Christmas break, winter break, whatever term you want to use it, is we get Christmas Day off. I'm saying Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. And that's usually about a 2-week time period. Our classified staff do not get paid for that time period. They get paid for those 3 holidays, but they don't get paid for that time period that they're off. What I would propose to the district is 2 things, and a couple of things, a step back. There are some districts that completely shut down their board office during winter break. I'm not proposing that. There's just too many things that we need to do. But what I am proposing is that we add 2 paid holidays, and this would be to all staff. So not just our 12-month staff. And so what I'm proposing is December 26th is the day after Christmas, and I'm proposing January 31st is New Year's Eve. Cost-wise to the district, it should cost us between $12,000 and $15,000. The employees that are working are already being paid, so they're being budgeted for. Administration is already budgeted for. If they want to take that time off, they take it as a vacation day. A lot of our principals are off that day anyway, so there's really no cost to them. The only people that the cost affects are our classified staff who basically are off for 2 weeks in the middle of the year, right around the holidays. And so they're getting paid for 3 of those days. 3 of those it depends, 10 to 12 workdays. I would like for the board to consider those 2 additional paid holidays. And I did say all staff. So our paras, our foods, nutrition services, anybody that would work for the district. We do have some rules that's already in effect. They have to be employed before the holiday. They have to be employed after the holiday in order to get the holiday pay. But like I said, $12,000 to $15,000 is not anything to sneeze at. I mean, that's money, but it's also a chance to get some money into the pockets of our population that need it the most. Plus, I did put a caveat on here. Sometimes technology and maintenance or custodial may need to work those days, and we'd trade those days out. But this is just something I've been thinking about for a while. It's not something that we have to do, but I think it's something that we should consider. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Just a clarification, it says December 26th and January 31st. That's supposed to be December 31st.
I'm sorry, mine is still saying that, so it should be December 31st.
Okay.
That is my mistake.
So on the, whenever Christmas Day and New Year's Day fall on weekends, how are we going to do I know we usually do observed or something to that effect. Are we going to do the same thing with the 26th and the 31st? They'd be observed during the week.
Yes, just like July 4th fell on a Sunday this year, then it was observed on the following day. So we would do the same thing. So if the 26th was to fall on a Saturday, then we would have observed it. Because the 25th is already a holiday, we would observe it on the following Monday.
Okay.
And same thing for December 31st instead of January 31st. I apologize. I really thought I'd fix that. It looks like as I'm looking at it, I definitely didn't.
So we only have 3 paid holidays right now.
During the winter break.
How many total do we?
Michelle, can you throw that out?
11 for 12 months.
And 9 we have 11 for 12-month or full-time employees. We have 9 paid holidays for the year-round employees.
So this might be a question for Michelle. I know that one of the challenges sometimes is hiring paras and retaining paras. Would that potentially help? Would that be something that would?
Oh, absolutely. When we have so many industries around us able to pay much more than we can, these are things that we can offer our employees that kind of balance that out a little bit.
And I was just using them as an example, but I know that's
absolutely.
something
We are,
trying.
what is it, Kylie? I think 15 or 16 custodians short as well for this upcoming school year.
Okay. So that could make it a little more
absolutely
appetizing to come.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sometimes the school calendar is an advantage because they like being off when their kids are off, but they certainly don't like not getting paid for all those days as well. So that's gonna be a challenge as well as a benefit of it.
The other reason I targeted this time period is it's a Christmas holiday. For people who observe Christmas, it's the winter holidays. And so you're getting hit with a lot of bills at a time that you're not getting any money. And so that's one of the things that I just thought that it might be something that we could reasonably do for all of our staff, but it's really going to benefit our classified 9-month classified employees.
What was the holiday we recently added? We just did
Martin
this.
Luther King Day and President Day. We
We
did
did
that
2.
2 years ago.
Okay.
I can certainly see it for classified staff, but that's a lot of holidays. I think we get 8. I mean,
Like I said, it's not something the board has to do. It's something that I just thought I'd bring it to you and ask you to consider.
where is this coming from? Is this something other districts are doing or you just?
Some districts are doing this, like Paola shuts down for the whole, I'm just thinking somewhere local. Paola shuts down for the whole winter break and my understanding is they get paid for that. I may be wrong. I know some other districts do that as well. So, no, this came from me. This is something that I was looking at. I've mentioned it to our administrators, ask them what their thoughts were and thought I would throw it out there.
Can you bring back some itemized, just some numbers of staff? How many?
You want to know how many staff?
Yeah, how many is this going to impact? And
Probably,
grow, you
we
know,
can
if
tell you probably about 200 right now.
Okay.
Yes.
My only concern is if you add another high school and 2 more schools, that 15,000 becomes a big number.
It-
But
it-
it's also dividable too. So, but
Right.
More students.
yeah.
Well, I don't think the workforce issues are going away anytime
No.
soon, especially with the lower the pay is for any position, not that it's less significant, but it's all over. That, so anything that you can do to
Any-
make something more.
any
effective, it
incentives.
doesn't cost you that much. I would be-
What's really hurting us, and Mrs. Mitchell, you're right. What's really hurting us is Amazon's right down the road, starting at $15 an hour. And what's happening is, I think even Quick Trip now is starting at $15 an hour. And so what hurts us is, it's for a school district, it's hard for us to pay that kind of money. So we have to be kind of creative. A few years ago, we decided to go year-round insurance, and that really helped us, because quite a few other districts don't do year-round insurance for the 9-month employees. But it's one of those things that I would love for us to start at a minimum of $15 an hour, but I just don't feel like we can do this. This is something that I thought we might be able to do. Again, I'm not going to say $12,000 to $15,000 is minimal, but, and the reason I can't give you the exact number is I don't know exactly how many people we're going to have working between now and then. So we feel like we have probably between 150 and 250 9-month employees. And then you've got another 300 to 350 certified employees. So that's why there's a range in there. A lot depends on who's working here at that time too. Like Michelle just said, we're short 15 custodians. If we fill that, then the number will obviously go up. If we don't fill it, then it won't be as much.
It's kind of like looking at it, adding it to like a benefit package. This makes it more enticing potentially for custodians, paras, things like that. That's something that I think has always been a concern of a lot of people. How can we retain and attract? Just using paras as an example again, but I always think of paras specifically because they're with our kids that need the most help, and we need the most stability with those kids. So whatever we can do to help encourage and help our SPED program too. Of course, the custodians and everyone else, but
Mrs. Sealing, you're 100% correct. Anything we can do to provide stability. Like I said, we're in a world right now that people jump jobs very quickly, and we're trying to provide something that will, maybe we can't pay as much, but maybe there's some other things that we can do to help them want to stay here.
well, and many meetings ago now, I think that was one of the things that I had brought up, but I think we were at the high school, of how much turnover we have in our para staff. And that maybe the midway through a school year, having another, that's kind of like another goal, like get to through those holidays and we get paid 2 more days, those days, maybe that retains people instead of them resigning even mid-year.
Any other questions?
I think we got to bring it back for an action item.
If you're not opposed, if the board's not opposed, I'll bring it back as an action.
Doug, what do you foresee and what are the downsides to this from a budget perspective?
Well, downsides,
Or just impacts, positive or negative? I guess.
The 12 to 15,000's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. But when you figure, our general fund budget's, 30 million, it's relatively small percentage in the big scheme of things. I see it more of as mentioned, a morale booster, and especially helping those that are at the lower end of the pay scale and missing out on some pay during that time. As far as those that work 12 months, you're just trading productivity. You're still paying them either way. They're just, whether you pay it as a holiday or they come in and work, all you're losing is the productivity. The budget's already there for them. So not a huge cost in the big scheme of things.
I think of return on investment. And if you can retain people, that's a good return,
Yes.
right? Consistency, having people consistent throughout the year. So I'd say bring it back as an action item. Like, well, let's not put it in the consent agenda, in case, so we can have some more discussion around it.
Yep.
I'll have it as an action item. Very good, thank you. Moving on to hazard mitigation plan review and adoption. Dr. Burke?
Well, as the board remember, as you will remember, a couple of years ago, the Johnson County Hazard Mitigation Plan Review and Adoption came through. And so we went through that. Basically, we have 3 attached documents from the Sheriff of Miami County. And the Homeland Security Regional J Hazard Mitigation Plan, I believe, is 90 pages long. I went through it. It's almost identical to what you approved back in 2014. Some dates have changed. And just to remind you, one of the things that helps us the most to be part of a mitigation plan is as long as we are identified in this plan, then we are eligible for FEMA money whenever there's a disaster. So if something was to happen anywhere in Miami County that was a major disaster, then our school district could ask for FEMA money. Now, granted, we only have the middle school and the old board office. And then if there's any, I mean, we still have a stadium and some things like that. But we are in that mitigation plan. So if there's a disaster, then we could ask for funding, FEMA funding for that. So that's the main thing. The other thing is, obviously, anytime that there's a full-on disaster, we're going to work with the counties, whether it be Johnson County and Miami County. But I did go through this. I set them down side by side. I did run this by Greg Goheen. Greg called me back after about an hour and he goes, this looks like exactly the same thing you did adopted back in 2014. So there's some minor changes, some dates, some additional buildings. Like Paola has some new school buildings and things like that. But for the most part, it's very simple, similar to what we did a few years ago. So with that, I'll stand for any question. They are asking us to adopt a resolution, and we can do that at the next board meeting if the board so wills.
In this document, does it say what is classified as a disaster? I'm scrolling.
It doesn't say that. It would just list us out as being eligible for disaster funds.
So I would imagine that either the governor or the president would have to declare it a disaster, that Miami County a disaster.
Right. Sometimes you can have like a few years back down in Pittsburgh, Kansas, there was a major flooding area. And even though that some of the schools weren't damaged, they were able to get FEMA fund and help funds and actually build onto some shelters and things like that, even though they weren't directly affected by it because the funds were generally for the whole area. So it's a strange way of doing business, but it's the same thing with Johnson County. If there's a major disaster in Johnson County, we now are eligible to get FEMA funds through that. So obviously no one wants a disaster to happen, but we do want to be prepared and be part of that in case there is a disaster.
It's an interesting document. If you want to know where there's a sinkhole since 19 whatever, how much the last ice storm cost in this area, I mean, it's in there. There's a lot of information.
Any other questions about adopting or discussion on adoption of a hazard mitigation plan by Miami County? Is this something we can bring back on a consent agenda? Yes.
It's
Well,
a
that
resolution,
was
I'm
my
not sure.
question. And my question, do you know if you?
I think you
can
have
we
to
do
actually read up.
resolutions on a consent agenda?
Consent agenda. Yes, you can put anything on there you choose.
Okay,
Sounds
We'll bring
good.
it back on the consent.
very good. Thank you.
Can I pause?
Yeah.
Going back to the 2022-23 academic calendar, I don't remember, one of the board members asked, Brad Wilson looked it up. The Kansas Regents calendar for spring break is aligned. So we would be on the same spring break as all the Regent schools.
For next year? Or
No, for the 22-23
Gotcha.
academic calendar. Yep. And
Plane tickets early.
now remember, what I said was that's the Regent schools. Doesn't mean the area
Yeah.
school districts are, but at least we're aligned with
Baker,
the
No Ottawa.
Otto and Baker are not considered regions.
Right. Just the private schools.
All right, moving on to items from Board of Education members for future meetings. Anything to add? I think,
One thing I did want to point out is Dr. Braun. I say it, I want to say Braun, but Dr. Braun from Johnson County Community College will be here at our next board meeting to visit.
Sounds great.
I'd had an item
Mhm.
in light of the NEA statements last week. Was wanting to possibly have a discussion on 1619 project and critical race theory.
I would appreciate that too. I've seen many districts around us coming out with a statement, so it would be helpful with questions coming at us with that.
Yes, that was what I was trying to remember.
So you'd like to have an informal discussion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
I'm certainly not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think that we all know that critical race theory is not an approved curriculum by the Kansas State Board of Education. However, there's a lot of feeling that it is being inserted anyway. That's the general, like, that's the consensus of the questions that I'm getting. It might not be an approved curriculum, but how are we monitoring if those ideals are being presented in the classrooms?
okay, did you have something else, Nels?
Nope.
Okay.
That's it.
Any other items?
I want to take one off the list. Well, you can take the tour off the list, obviously. I'm getting something set up with a person from the Department of Education on computer science as a core. I think that's just going to be something that we figure out how it goes, and it'll be brought back to the board at some point late in the future. It doesn't need an informal discussion, I don't think.
I think too, with the COVID lessons learned, that might be just a topic we could discuss at one of those 5th Monday meetings.
That'd be fine.
Take it off of this list and put it on
Sure.
one of those.
Okay, other items to add to the list? Okay, moving on to board work calendar.
You took care of most of that tonight. Publication of budget notice and budget policy work, that will be coming up. The way the law is set up, board clerk, you may want to move this into August. Because these are things that are normally back before the law was done. These were done in July. Now with the new change in the law, these will all be moved to August. So that would be the publication of budget notice and the budget policy work session. Other than that, we're good shape.
Very good. Any questions on board work calendar? So you're going to move the publication of budget notice and budget and policy work session to August. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Moving on to committee reports.
The Kansas Association of School Boards has approved, and we've actually created a new for-profit company called Kansas Sports Solutions. It's going to be mainly centered around leadership consulting, a lot of the things that KSB does, but we're getting too revenue heavy sometimes, profit heavy. And so if you go over 15%, then you can get audited, and there's some other things that go along with being not for profit, right? So a lot of those things are going to be moved over to the for-profit, and then KSB will own it completely, and the revenue that needs to come back to KSB will, and then we can hire new staff and things like that. So that was approved, excuse me, approved and started July 1st with the new company. I've been appointed to the board of directors for that. And we'll have our first board meeting for that in August. So we've got 2 organizations going now, all with the same purpose of helping boards of education.
How does our membership get impacted? How does the district membership get impacted?
The district membership, as far as dues go, they're not impacted at all. This is going to be above and beyond.
Okay, normal
What's
services.
normal offerings from KASB. So it'll be things like if we want to do not that you're going anywhere, but if we did a superintendent search, that money would flow through that new board solutions company.
Good. Well, congratulations on
Thanks.
being appointed to the board of directors there. Other committee reports. Let's do that. All right, moving on to the superintendent report.
Yeah, I'm leaving tomorrow morning for AASA advocacy. So on Wednesday, we're getting to meet with state senator or US senators from the state of Kansas and House reps. So I'm excited. It's kind of fun to get to go and visit with them. They're always happy and welcome us into Kansas. And then we ask for money and then they're really happy for us to leave too. But it's always kind of neat to go
Do you get to go to DC in person?
in person. So yes.
We had to do everything online on our app.
Matter of fact, my flight leaves at 6. So if there's anybody that wants to volunteer to drive me to the airport, I would certainly allow that.
On Monday?
No,
Tomorrow?
tomorrow morning.
Very well. I think you have some meetings or something.
Dayton Creek, from 6 to 8 on the 28th. I think you heard that, but I just want to make sure the board and the public knows that's our open house. We're really excited to show that off. And then we've got some really exciting news. I think I shared this with the board, but I want to share with the public. Dr. Randy Watson and the State Board of Ed will be coming here for a listening tour on September 2nd from 11:30 to 1 p.m. That'll be at Woodland Spring Middle School.
What date did you say?
September 2nd. That's 11:30 to 1 p.m. and we'll be at Woodland Spring Middle School. So exciting. Dr. Watson did a listening tour, I believe, when he started 7 years ago, just going around to the various communities and asking people what they wanted out of the State Board of Education, Kansas State Department of Ed and Education. And so they reached out to us, asked us if we were willing to host, and we said absolutely. So I'm wanting to throw that out early to you. So I know that most of you work, but I'm hoping that, all of you work, but I'm hoping that some of you might be able to get off and be available to attend. So wanted to throw that early. So we're really excited to be able to host.
Where's that again?
It'll be at Woodland Spring Middle School. The thing that they needed was they needed an area that they could have technology, an area for 100 people with tables. And so we have some other areas in the district, but it is a school day. And so that was probably the easiest place that we could block off to have a meeting and not interrupt school as much. So that's all I have.
Very good, thank you. We do need an executive session this evening.
Mr. President, I move that the board recess into executive session to discuss employer-employee negotiations under Tacoma for negotiations. Those to be in session include the Board of Education members, Superintendent of Schools, Assistant Superintendent of Schools, and Director of Human Resources, and other administrators as requested. And Director of Business, if he wants to come. The time to go into recess would be 8:50. And come back to this place in no later than 9:10.
Second.
Let's move to second to move to executive session for concerning matters relating to employer-employee negotiations under coma. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbold.
Yes.
And Mr. Updike.
Yes,
Approved.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Updike?
Yes.
Chair Mitchell? Mrs. Sealing? Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we're back in session.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve master agreement with certified staff for the 2-year contract, 21 to 22 and 22 to 23. That's presented.
Second.
So we're having a little difficulty here. We're having a concern here because that's not our recommended action, so we need to change it. Are we still on 16.01?
Yes.
Mhm.
Do you want me to say as recommended by superintendent?
Well, this isn't talking about the master agreement.
About negotiations.
The negotiations is only for the master agreement.
I understand that, but that's not what our recommended action reads. So we can change it to what Mr. Winbolt said.
You need to change it to what I said, please.
Okay.
So could you repeat the motion?
I move that the board approve the master agreement with certified staff, 2-year contract for the 21-22 school year, 22-23 school year, as recommended by the superintendent.
Is there a second?
Oh, I already seconded it.
Oh.
That was just a restatement. Sorry.
And this
I'm
is not,
restating my second.
okay, and this is not necessarily a 2-year contract for all, like new teachers or something, right?
Yes, it's all certified staff.
It's a master agreement.
Negotiations for the master agreement.
I thought people were on a temporary for a year by year until they hit 3 years or something.
That's
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. It's different.
Mhm. Right.
This is
It's still, there's still year by year, but we have a master agreement for 2 years.
Got it.
So we don't have to.
This
renew.
isn't individual contracts. This is a master agreement.
Right.
Yes.
Got it.
Right.
Yep. Same page.
Any other questions? Candy, please collect, or Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
approved.
thank you. Moving on to our next action item on 21-22 academic calendar change.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve a new calendar due to a change in the master agreement as presented by the superintendent
Second.
for 21-22 school year only.
It's moved and seconded to approve the change in the 21-22 academic calendar as recommended by the superintendent. Any final questions or comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes,
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
approved.
okay, moving on to contracts and work agreements.
Mr. President, I move the board approve according to, we doing certified as well?
It'd be classified staff work agreements and administrative.
Okay.
contracts.
Not to
Sorry,
include.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve classified work agreements and administrative contracts as recommended, not include the superintendent, as recommended by the superintendent. Hmm? For 21-22 only.
That's correct. Second.
It's moved to second to approve classified staff work agreements, administrative contracts, not to include the superintendent, as stated.
for the 21-22 school year.
Yep.
Okay.
Any final questions or comments? Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Hoffman,
Yes.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealy.
Yes.
Approved.
Mr. President, I move that the board approve a new action item 16.04 for the approval of, or for the action of contract of the superintendent.
I'm not sure I'm following you.
We need another action item for the superintendent. I have to add the action item to the agenda before we
Okay.
can do the agenda, actual action.
Okay,
You may have to help me here. We have to add the action item and then we'll vote on the action item.
Right. I'm asking for approval to add the action item.
okay, let's. It's moved to add an action item to the agenda. Yeah, we'll have a motion. We'll do a second. We'll have discussion. We'll either continue or postpone. I'll second the motion. It's moved and seconded to add the action item of superintendent's contract to the agenda. Katie, please collect the vote.
Mr. Winbolt,
Yes.
Mr. Updike,
Yes.
Mrs. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Sealing,
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman.
Yes.
Approved.
Mr. President, I move the board approve the same raise as administrative contracts for the superintendent for the 21-22 school year.
I think we should wait until we have an evaluation, a conversation with our superintendent before we move on the contract for the
This-
superintendent.
Did you say raise or contract?
He said
It's
a raise.
raise as per the same as the administrative contracts.
I don't know, that's, I think we need to do the evaluation first. Other thoughts and discussion?
That seems like the typical plan of more order to do evaluation and then discussion and then talk about a raise following.
Admittedly, we are a little behind schedule.
Mhm.
Yes,
I mean,
we are behind
that's-
schedule.
We are quite a few months behind schedule, and I just thought it would be fair for Dr. Burke to get the same as the rest. We can do his evaluation at a later date.
I think we need to, I would say again, I think we need to walk through the evaluation for the superintendent's contract prior to finalizing that. From my perspective anyway, the raise is directly linked with the evaluation. And I think to do the evaluation or the raise prior to that evaluation would be premature. Other thoughts and discussion?
That is the normal sequence, I would, in my opinion also.
I would agree it's normal sequence. However, we are completely out of normal sequence on this.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to Dr. Burke to have to wait because we screwed up.
So when this raise is for which year?
The upcoming 21-22 school year.
I think we'll have I would propose we add an action item or an executive session at the July 26th meeting to review Dr. Burke's self-evaluation.
That's a good idea.
That would be my proposal. Other questions or comments?
We currently have a motion on the floor. If we don't get a second, we don't go any further, but we have to request a second on that motion.
I don't hear a second.
No.
Oh, for what? What's the,
Mr. Winbolt has made a motion to
Right.
approve the contract for the superintendent for 21-22 school year. So we need to
no,
request.
approve the raise, right?
Raise.
Yes,
Yeah.
raise
And
increase
so
is the same as
we need
administrative
to
contract.
request for the second. So I'm requesting a second. Do I have a second on that motion? We have not received a second, so that motion.
Okay, moving on to final agenda item,
Sure.
Move to adjourn.
adjourn. We are adjourned.